On our newscast tonight, Samsung Electronics, the world's largest smartphone maker, shocks the world with much lower than expected earnings in the fourth quarter of 2013, the lowest quarterly profit in more than a year. With Seoul awaiting a response from Pyongyang over a proposal to resume reunions for families separated by the Korean War, experts are weighing in. Pyongyang's reaction, they say, will serve as a barometer of their sincerity in mending ties with the South. And for the first time in the U.S. Federal Reserve's 100-year history, a female chairman is named. Janet Yellen is said to become one of the most powerful women in U.S. history. Stay with us for these stories and more.
It is 4 a.m. in Washington, 10 at the Vatican, and 6 on a Tuesday evening here in Seoul. Welcome to Early Edition at 6. I'm Moon Gun-young.
And I'm Daniel Che. Thank you for joining us. We begin with South Korea's proposal for talks with North Korea on resuming reunions for families separated since the Korean War.
Right, no response yet from Pyongyang, but experts say the proposal itself will serve as strong momentum to mending ties, as it is not in North Korea's interest either to further increase tensions on the Korean peninsula.
Seoul has made clear, however, that the humanitarian event will not in any way be linked to a halted inter-Korean tourism project. Our Han Da-eun starts us off.
Following in the footsteps of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's friendly New Year's message, President Park Geun-hye also made a conciliatory gesture on Monday, suggesting a resumption of inter-Korean family reunions for those separated since the Korean War. Pyongyang unilaterally and abruptly canceled reunions planned for September, just days before they were to take place. So could President Park's proposal serve as the touchstone for friendlier inter-Korean relations this year? Experts say yes.
I think the proposal will serve as momentum to improve strained inter-Korean ties. President Park did urge North Korea to abandon its nuclear program, but overall, her speech has left the door open for dialogue. North Korea doesn't want further tensions now either, as it's weathering some internal instability.
Seoul's Unification Ministry, however, made clear on Tuesday that the issue of family reunions will not be linked to the halted inter-Korean tourism project near Mount Kumgangsan. The announcement is being interpreted by many as a way to block North Korea from taking advantage of family reunions to restart tourism operations. Seoul maintains the stance that tours to the Mount Kumgang resort will not resume unless Pyongyang claims responsibility for shooting a South Korean tourist dead in 2008. But some experts say the issue of the Mount Kumgangsan project won't get in the way of restarting inter-Korean dialogue.
Even if North Korea attempts to mix the two issues, I think the two sides will be able to find middle ground, as they've now both entered a phase of seeking out dialogue.
Analysts also add Seoul's latest offer will serve as a barometer of North Korea's sincerity in mending ties with the South. Han Da-eun, Arirang News.
Now, the main opposition Democratic Party's floor leader Chun Byung-hun has proposed setting up a special parliamentary committee to discuss amending the Constitution, which was last revised in 1987. Chun visited National Assembly Speaker Kang Chang-hee earlier this afternoon, where he asked for his support in kickstarting a parliamentary discussion on improving the presidential system and amending outdated constitutional provisions.
In response, the National Assembly Speaker said he would launch an advisory committee soon and have it submit a proposal for amending the Constitution before his term ends in May. The Democratic Party floor leader also proposed holding an inter-Korean parliamentary meeting as a means of boosting cooperation and stability on the Korean peninsula. But Kang told Chun that inter-Korean ties must thaw a bit before such talks can take place.
Samsung Electronics has turned in a worse-than-expected earnings report card for the fourth quarter of last year. And with its arch-rival Apple poised to extend its reach into the Chinese market later this month, it appears as though Samsung is facing a tough year ahead. Here's our Yoo Ri-yeon with more.
The world's largest smartphone maker surprised analysts with its lower-than-expected earnings announcement. Samsung Electronics said Tuesday that its operating profits reached 8.3 trillion won, or roughly $7.8 billion in the October to December period. This falls far short of the most bearish outlook of $8.2 billion and also represents the company's lowest quarterly profit in more than a year.
The profit rate fell sharply in the smartphone sector. As competition grew fierce in China, the company saw high marketing costs. It also had to set aside funds to pay for fines in connection to lawsuits with Apple.
Analysts also point to the bonus payments to employees as another reason. They were given out to mark the 20th anniversary since Samsung chairman Park Geun-hye set out an ambitious roadmap to turn his company into a global technology leader. Looking ahead, analysts say Samsung Electronics will do better this quarter than last on the back of strong semiconductor sales. But it seems that the era of explosive profits fueled by the tech giant's cutting-edge smartphones is over. While the company still faces hefty marketing costs, it now faces pressure to offer smartphones that aren't just better, but cheaper as well. It appears inevitable that profits will decline as its average selling prices continue to slide amid increased competition from low-cost smartphones. Analysts forecast single-digit growth or a slight contraction for the company's mobile division this year. On top of that, Apple's fierce marketing strategies loom as another threat this year. Starting late next week, Apple will enter China's $80 billion market, challenging Samsung's tight grip on the market there. Apple is also expected to start selling smartphones with larger screens near the end of the year, putting it in direct competition with Samsung's Galaxy Note series. Yuri-an, Arirang News.
Now, in what's shaping up to be an epic battle, Korea's electronics heavyweights Samsung and LG will go toe-to-toe as they attempt to dazzle at this year's Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. Our Kim Jong-un reports.
Their Consumer Electronics Show 2014 is primed to pit fierce rivals Samsung and LG against each other. Both Korean tech giants are in Las Vegas with hundreds of other firms to unveil their TVs, smartphones, wearable devices, and pretty much anything else a consumer might want to buy. Samsung Electronics, the world's #1 maker of flat-screen TVs, hopes to extend its market lead with its 105-inch ultra-high-definition TV with a curved display that features state-of-the-art resolution. The UHD TV lineups feature so-called finger gesture functions, which allow users to activate the device by moving their hands over the device. LG Electronics will unveil the world's largest 77-inch curved organic light emitting diode, or OLED TV. LG says more than 70% of its smart TV lineup will eventually be equipped with WebOS. The WebOS operating system simplifies ways to control and find content on its smart TVs. Wearable devices are also one of the trends to watch in Las Vegas. Samsung is showing off its latest Galaxy Gear smartwatches, which can be linked to home appliances, allowing users to remotely control their TVs or lights with their smartwatches. LG is also pushing its wearable device, the LifeBand Touch, which offers fitness data to users as well as alerting users to phone calls and texts. Samsung and LG will also unveil a slew of connected home products, through which users will be able to connect to their home appliances via smartphones instead of through a separate smart device. The Consumer Electronics Show 2014 runs through January 10th. Kim Jong-un, Arirang News.
Shifting our focus back to the nation's top office, President Park Geun-hye has called on state-owned institutions to actively participate in the government's push to change and reform the public sector. Speaking at this year's first cabinet meeting Tuesday, President Park said it's time for public institutions that have greatly contributed to the growth of the nation to win back faith from the people. She stressed the public sector should carry out reforms by themselves rather than blaming each other for mounting debt and work closely with the government. The president added that labor and management should cooperate in seeking ways to reduce debt and tighten up lax management, as they won't be able to provide the public with high-quality public services if they don't. President Park Geun-hye's plan to ease investment regulations in the service sector to boost domestic demand is showing signs of progress. However, challenges remain and the voices of dissent are growing louder. Our Kwon So-ah has this report.
A bill proposed to ease regulations for industrial complex investments was passed at a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, one day after President Park Geun-hye placed an emphasis on boosting domestic demand by deregulating the service sector.
올해 투자 관련 규제를 백지 상태에서 전면 재검토해서 꼭 필요한 규제가 아니면 모두 풀겠습니다.
As another follow-up measure to President Park's plan, the ruling Saenuri Party said on Tuesday that it will focus on passing laws related to streamlining regulations at a parliamentary extra session scheduled for February. They say about 20 bills were pushed back in 2013. According to the party's think tank, merely passing the pending bills could bump up the nation's economic growth rate by 0.4%. One of the bills the Saenuri Party proposed last year was related to a zoning law that says no hotels can be built within 200 meters of an elementary, middle, or high school. The Ministry of Strategy and Finance expects that lifting the restriction could result in 60 new hotels in the country and about 47,000 new jobs. However, the main opposition Democratic Party stood in opposition to the bill, claiming it would damage the environment for education. Another pending law would allow casinos to be built and operate on Korean cruise lines, a move designed to attract more foreign tourists to the country. The Democratic Party, however, said the change could lead to a growth in gambling addiction. The party also expressed concerns that President Park's aim of easing investment regulations is a move towards privatization, especially in the health sector, something that could lead to a rise in medical costs, a drop in quality, and polarization among economic classes. President Park, meanwhile, will be leading the ministerial meeting for the regulation reforms herself. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Now, for this first week of 2014, we would like to dedicate our In the Spotlight segment to the Korean government's policy goals in different sectors, and today it's the economy. Now, the government recently laid out some ambitious plans for the domestic economy this year.
And for a look at the economic ups and downs ahead in the year 2014, we connect live to our Hwang Ji-hye in the news center.
Now, Ji-hye, let's start with the economic goals the Korean government has set for the economy this year.
Konyang Daniel, the Korean government expects the domestic economy to grow by 3.9% in 2014, up from a 2.8% estimate for last year, and unveiled its three-year economic innovation plan that outlines its longer-term economic goals. Under the plan, first mentioned by President Park Geun-hye yesterday during her New Year's press conference, the country's growth potential is expected to grow to around 4%, and the annual per capita income is forecast to exceed $30,000 with sights on reaching 40,000. The government also aims to achieve a 70% employment rate. Today, Finance Minister Hyun Woo-seok reiterated the plan and set a clear timeline to carry it out.
We will collect opinions from various institutions like the Korea Development Institute so that we can come up with a roadmap for the three-year economic innovation plan by the end of February.
Very ambitious plan there. The question becomes, I guess, what needs to happen for the Korean economy to accomplish this three-year economic plan, right, Jia?
Yes, Daniel. First of all, experts say the goals that make up the plan are not easy, as the domestic economy has to expand about 4% every year to achieve them by 2017. Adding to that skepticism, Korea's annual per capita income has remained in the $20,000 range for 7 straight years after it first exceeded that number in 2007. But that being said, experts say the three-year plan is not an impossible goal, but they point to the importance of boosting domestic demand. And to boost domestic demand, experts as well as policymakers, as Hwa said in a package earlier, emphasize the importance of easing corporate regulations and fostering the nation's service sector, including the health and tourism industries.
It's important to create a virtuous circle among consumption, investment, and employment. The link has been very weak recently.
To boost domestic demand, strengthening the competitive edge of the nation's service sector is critical. Easing corporate regulations so that companies can actively invest in the service sector is also important.
Now, Ji-hye, focusing on the growth prospects for this year, what are some critical variables that could really impact the Korean economy?
Well, economists cite a number of major risks stemming from the global economy, including the U.S. Federal Reserve's decision last month to taper its $85 billion per month bond buying stimulus measures, the slowing Chinese economy, and Abenomics in Japan, which is pushing the Japanese yen lower. Abenomics in particular is a major concern among Korean exporters as it erodes the price competitiveness of Korean manufacturers, especially in the automobile and electronics sectors.
The current trend of the weakening Japanese yen will hurt Korea's exporters and could eventually lead to a reduction in Korea's overall growth rate by 0.1 percentage points per year.
In terms of uncertainties at home, experts point to the snowballing household debt problem that's having a negative impact on consumption and the sluggish real estate market as major variables that could cut the nation's growth rate. They say, however, that the recovery we're seeing in advanced nations is still a good sign for the Korean economy.
Well, certainly a lot to think about as the Korean government pushes forward with its ambitious economic goals in 2014. Thank you for that report, Ji-hye.
That was our economics correspondent Hwang Ji-hye reporting live from the Arirang News Center.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with heroes and experts to help you understand the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best with Moon Gun-young and Daniel Che on Early Edition at 6.
Now shifting gears to the economy, Korean import prices rose by... So it has been confirmed Janet Yellen is to become the first female chairman of the U.S. Federal Reserve in its 100-year history. Arirang News' Connie Lee has more on the next in line to head the Federal Reserve and her plans to boost the U.S. economy.
With a vote of 56 to 26, the Senate has approved Democratic nominee Janet Yellen as the next chairman of the Federal Reserve. The Senate's nod on Monday makes Yellen the first female head of the U.S. Central Bank and one of the most powerful women in U.S. history, as she is set to lead a major economy. Yellen will officially take the reins on February 1st, replacing current Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke, whose second four-year term expires at the end of this month. 67-year-old Yellen currently serves as the Fed's vice chair and as a supporter of the easy money policies the Fed has been pursuing under Bernanke. She's expected to continue the fight to bring unemployment down, even if that means strategies that drive inflation higher. When voting time came, the Republicans who voted against her were those against the Fed's aggressive $85 billion a month bond buying program, even though the Fed decided to taper the monthly purchases down to $75 billion starting January. At her first public appearance as nominee to succeed Bernanke last November, Yellen said she would follow in her predecessor's footsteps on quantitative easing. Previously, Yellen served as president of the San Francisco Federal Reserve Bank and also governor of the Fed Board and chair of President Bill Clinton's Council of Economic Advisors. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Well, shifting our focus a little bit, the U.S. has urged Korea, China, and Japan to resolve their historical differences through dialogue following Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's visit to the controversial Yasukuni War Shrine. Now, although Abe has since called for meetings with Japan's Asian neighbors to explain his actions, the visit is likely to remain an obstacle to future attempts to mend relations. Arirang News' Kim Hyun-bin reports.
The U.S. government continues to take a relatively neutral stance on Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's visit late last month to the highly controversial Yasukuni Shrine. At a press briefing on Monday, U.S. State Department Deputy Spokesperson Marie Harf said the issue is sensitive and countries in the region should resolve their differences through dialogue. The U.S. official did not mention whether the Yasukuni issue will come up in talks Tuesday between Secretary of State John Kerry and South Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se in Washington. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has said he wants to meet with the leaders of Korea and China to explain why he visited the shrine.
As far as my visit to Yasukuni is considered, I would like to explain my true intentions directly and honestly.
Abe said Monday that dialogue is a key factor to resolve tensions with the three Northeast Asian neighbors and to maintain peace and security in the region. Abe added that he also wanted to explain his reasons for trying to amend Japan's pacifist constitution, which was imposed on Japan after the Second World War. China said Abe's repeated calls for better ties with China were deceiving. And by visiting the Yasukuni shrine, Abe had closed the door on dialogue with Beijing. Seoul is yet to respond to Abe's latest remarks, but President Park, during a New Year's press conference Monday, said any meeting between the leaders of Korea and Japan should bring about results that help the development of bilateral relations. The Yasukuni shrine honors Japan's 2.5 million war dead, including 14 Class A war criminals, and hundreds more convicted of lesser crimes. Kim Jong-un, Arirang News.
The Sea or Sea of Japan, if you ask anyone outside of Japan, the answer is quite straightforward. Well, Virginia state legislators will begin discussing bills this week on how the waters between Korea and Japan will be named in school textbooks. Our Son Jung-in has more.
Efforts to promote the name East Sea for the body of water between Korea and Japan are gathering steam in the U.S. after a long campaign by a group of local residents. Virginia state legislators on Wednesday will start debating 3 bills that require all future public school textbooks used in the state to identify the body of water as both the East Sea and the Sea of Japan, which is the name currently in use. The bills were sponsored by Dave Marsden, a Democratic state senator, Tim Hugo, a Republican member of the Virginia House, and Richard Black, a Republican state senator. The three held a press conference prior to the legislative session to express their support for the bills.
Is say that if we're going to teach something to our young people, that we will reflect that teaching in our textbooks and on our maps. It's really quite that simple.
And here's what, Democrat, Republican, this is not a Democratic bill, this is not a Republican bill, this is a proper bill, this is the right thing to do. And that's why we're going to do this bill.
None of us has any interest in exacerbating any tensions or frictions between South Korea and Japan. Both nations are important allies of the United States.
A similar bill was voted down last year by the Education Committee of the Virginia Senate, but experts say the chances are high that the bills with bipartisan support will be approved this time. The state of Virginia has more than 150,000 Korean and Korean American residents. Koreans have strongly contended that the name Sea of Japan is a legacy of Japan's imperialistic past. The bills, if approved, would take effect starting on July 1st of this year. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories, prosecutors have issued arrest warrants for 4 high-profile figures of Dongyang Group, one of the largest conglomerates in Korea, on charges of malpractice and fraud. The Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office said the conglomerate's 65-year-old chairman, Hyun Jae-hyun, with the help of his former senior executives, have been issuing fraudulent corporate bonds and commercial papers in bulk since 2007. Hyun is also suspected of intentionally filing for court receivership for 5 of the company's affiliates when it wasn't necessary, a move that inflicted heavy losses of around $940 million on investors. Hyun and his associates are to be questioned by authorities on Thursday.
Time now to get a check on the weather conditions. For that, we have our Kim Bo-kyung standing by at the Weather Center. Bo-kyung, I hear snow is on the way.
That's right, Kan-young. Snow showers are forecast for most parts of the country tomorrow, which is good news for those of you who've been waiting for snow.
Good news for those who love to roll in it and become like those rice cakes that we have in Korea. Well, what about the temperatures there?
Well, Daniel, temperatures will gradually take a dip starting tomorrow afternoon. As for tomorrow's snow showers, the mountains in Gangwon-do and Gyeongsangbuk-do provinces could get up to 8 centimeters of snow, and the central regions, including Seoul, only a centimeter. Other than that, fine dust will continue to stick around, so please be sure to tune in for future weather updates. Taking a look at tomorrow's readings, Seoul, Daegu, and Gwangju all make it to 4 degrees, while rain is forecast in Busan all day with a high of 6. Moving on to other regions, Jeju and Dokdo reach 10 and 8 degrees respectively. Meanwhile, Mount Kumgang tops out at -5. Well, that's all I have for you this hour, and back to you guys.
Thank you for that, Bo-kyung. And that wraps up the news for this hour. Thank you for watching. This has been Daniel Choi.
And I'm Moon Gon-young. Thank you, as always, for being here with us. Have a wonderful rest of the evening, and we'll see you right back here same time tomorrow. Good night.